Yeah, it just kind of highlighted it to me a bit. Like, oh, there's another player that's gone now, and it's getting quicker and quicker. No one likes to say goodbye. Sadly, this week we've had to say goodbye to the Champions League group stage, but we will get on to that. For now, hello and welcome to the Anglo-Italian podcast. As always, my name is Rory, and I'm joined by my very good friend
Adam. Hey Rory, how are you doing this evening? I felt really at home when I heard Antoine Griezmann is still playing Football Manager and is guiding Blackburn from the Championship to the Premier League, currently in 6th position, and he doesn't recall who his right back from Liverpool that he got. So I'm sure Calvin Ramsey is feeling at home with that thought. But it makes me feel a little bit easy with my FM addiction, as I'm sure with yourself as well, Rory. But
Man,
how are things in my man?
I've had a traumatic day on Football Manager today. So I got Bari promoted into Serie A.
Wow.
First time trying. I am now bankrupt. So I'm trying to stay in Serie A with minus money. Turns out it's quite
minus
difficult.
points as well, is it?
No, not quite. Not quite at that level yet. But I had the striker on loan, Marco Nasti from Milan, who was incredible. Yeah. Halfway through the season, had 10 goals in Serie A, bossing it. I was 15th. I'm like, right, killing it. Here we go. They recall him halfway through the season.
Oh, no.
I've got nobody to score goals. I can't sign anyone. I can't even pay a signing on fee for a player. So I'm playing a 16-year-old up front, right?
Wow.
Or Kevin Lasagna. I'm sticking with the 16-year-old.
Yeah, of course.
And now I'm only 3 points above the relegation zone. It's looking pretty nervy. I've got 7 games left. It's pretty stressful, man. I don't want to get relegated and have to come back up. It was so hard to get
Taribo West available on a free transfer?
I can't even do free transfers. It's insane. Honestly, I have zero money. My scouting is like minus 100 grand or something now. I'm like, I really not run this club very well. So you can imagine what my personal finances are like, listeners. But apart from that, Milan is all right. It's not bad. Winter's kicking in, but I've got my hot tea. So I'll be all right. How are you doing, man?
Yeah, not too bad. Like yourself, I'm showing the listeners as well that are viewing on YouTube. I've got a bit of Polish vodka because, unfortunately, Rory, I told you offline, I've been suffering with this viral infection that's sweeping the UK at the moment. So, I've spoken about my traumatic experience last night, but I'm glad to say I'm fully recovered. So that is just in aid of if I have like a coughing fit. So I do apologise in advance to those listening.
I just want to see you do a shot on the camera, honestly, for it to go on YouTube. It'd be amazing.
I'll just do a little bit now.
There we go. Oh, look at that.
Smooth like ice.
There we go. There we go. Honestly, listeners, Polish vodka will kill almost anything, if not everything. So I think Adam should be able to get to the end of the show, hopefully. So we do have quite a lot to talk about. Obviously, as I referenced at the top of the show, that is the last ever Champions League group stage. I'm going to miss it. We will miss it. We're going to talk about how we feel about it, maybe some of our favourite moments, some of our favourite teams that have appeared. And what this means for the future of the game. We will be wrapping up the final round of fixtures in the group stage. We'll be talking about Manchester United again. Don't worry. We'll be talking a little bit about Milan. Of course, I called it. I got a prediction right. Pioli managed to pull something out of the bag, and we'll be talking about who we would like to see or not like to see in the next round. Then, of course, we'll be looking at the Premier League and Serie A weekends coming up. We've got some big games in both countries. There could be a few hammerings on the cards. I'm kind of anticipating it a bit. But listeners, we are going to take a very, very quick break. And after that, we'll come back with the Champions League. And we are back. And it's time for the last ever round of the Champions League, the group stages. And it was emotional. Let's talk about the games first before we go into the wider issues. Let's start on Tuesday night. And if we are starting on Tuesday night, we can only start, as always, in bloody Old Trafford. I'm so sick of being there. As Man United 0, Bayern 1. Now, I think the thing that stood out for most people in this game, for a game that Manchester United definitely needed to win, it was a defensively solid performance but there was nothing else. They managed to produce one shot on target, which was a shot from Luke Shaw. They had 5 shots in total compared to Bayern's 10 and 3 on target. They had less possession, a lot less passes. They played like the away team in this game, Adam, no?
Strangely enough, yeah. I mean, if you look at the way they kind of conceded that goal, you'd have actually thought that they were on the attack or counter-attacking at the time, because the amount of space they kind of afforded to the Bayern Munich kind of midfield and their attacking players, you would have thought there was something going on, right? It was strangely one of their better performances, but on the flip side, actually, the formation just didn't work. The type of players that were kind of asked to do certain roles for this match clearly didn't follow it through. And I felt sorry for the likes of Amrabat, for example, who had to kind of a bit like a FM kind of formation where you expect one midfielder to cover the whole of that midfield area. That's what he was doing, basically, which I thought was really weird because, like, how else is he going to, I suppose, do anything when you haven't got anyone that can support you? And yeah, I felt really sorry for the way they went out in some respects, but then they've only got themselves to blame, and Ten Hag has to answer a few more questions. I think the one stat that I've kind of pulled together here, Rory, so since November going until this very moment in time, they've scored 10 goals, conceded 19, and in that space of time, they've won 4 games, lost 5, and drawn once. Now, if you compare that to the likes of, say, Liverpool, who are top of the Premier League, if you include tonight's result where they lost as well, so they've scored 22 goals, conceded 10, but they've won 6 games and only had 2 defeats. And just to make it even more kind of comparison, I've just compared it to Sheffield United. Sheffield United in that space of time have conceded 12 goals and scored only 4 times. I'm not going to dwell too much on how many they've won and lost, but just to kind of give you the comparisons of how poorly Man United have been performing.
Yeah.
Look, they've conceded less goals than Man United in that space of time. And we know about the fact that Man United have got this inevitable kind of record of conceding a lot of goals at this group stage as well, joint with, obviously, Royal Antwerp, which, yeah, they kind of made a mess of it yesterday as well, to be fair. But, yeah, shocking. I mean, what was your takes from the game? I mean, do you see a future for Ten Hag?
I think while this I've said it before, but I think while this takeover is still underway or not finalised, I think he's going to be in charge. There's no one there to actually take charge to fire him, I think, at this point.
Exactly.
But the fact that rumours and stories are now coming out of who Jim Ratcliffe actually wants. I saw a story today that he's talked to Graham Potter. There's a few names coming out now that, like, I think Erik Ten Hag may not be long for this Man United world. And honestly, I think it's probably deserved. I think, look, we know there's so many issues at that club. We've talked about them every frigging week for 2 years, it feels like. But he still has to take some of the blame. And I understand that. I think what happened here is he got caught between 2 stools, and he's like, right, we definitely can't concede, because if we concede, we're never coming into the game again.
Yeah.
But then, okay, we need to score. And I think it's just with the ability in this squad, or lack of ability in this squad, or the lack of running, or whatever it is, they're only able to do one thing at a time. It's like, I think Arteta used the analogy of, like, having a blanket that's too short, right? You pull it up because your nipples are cold and your feet are cold. So you lower it down, then your feet are warm, but your nipples are cold, kind of thing. And I think they can only cover one thing at a time.
Yeah.
And so I think defensively, pretty good. Solid, right? To keep Bayern to 1-0. Like, Bayern definitely should have scored a few more, but definitely. To keep them down to, like, a relatively low number of shots, I suppose. Like, defensively, it was a solid performance. But just attacking-wise, there was nothing. I just think he got caught between 2 stools. The squad isn't able to focus on 2 jobs at once.
No, clearly not, yeah.
Ultimately, the quality told. And I think even a player like, and you mentioned him, Amrabat, it's crazy how players just deteriorate at that club. Now, because we saw him at Fiorentina, and we saw him... Now, I know international football matters more to some players, right? And, like, him at the World Cup, he was an absolute phenomenon, just running, like... He's still running from the World Cup, right? Like, he just did not stop running. But... And at Fiorentina, he was similar. He wasn't like... He was basically the sole defensive midfielder in that team. I think he was able to give license to the other midfielders to push on a bit more.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is why Fiorentina are missing him so much now. But I think once he's got to United, he's not able to do that because you're adjusting to a new league. The Premier League is faster than Serie A, right? It is higher intensity. And then you're also the only one in the midfield doing that job. And I just feel like we're watching him deteriorate again. I think he's a player that just looks low in confidence and not able to do his job. He looked out of his depth. I don't think he showed enough quality. And I'm just like, well, there's another player that's gone there and it's just absolutely killed him.
Terrible.
And it's taken, 3 months? He joined on the last day of the transfer window, right? So it's like he's only been there 2-3 months. And it's just like, it just blows my mind. And I thought, it just kind of highlighted it to me a bit. Like, oh, there's another player that's gone now. And it's just, it's getting quicker and quicker. But to answer your original question, I think Ten Hag is here until Jim Ratcliffe takes over ultimately. But this is the worst ever performance by an English team in the Champions League group stage. It is monumental how bad they've been. And I think Ten Hag after the game was trying to cover it and trying to be like, oh, well, we played well and we were in the game and to keep it 1-0, we did well. And it's like, but even like talking like that, you're like, but this is, and again,
this is tiresome,
this is Manchester United we're talking about. Like at home, you've got to be fucking going for it. And like even his substitutions at the end, I thought he made like, I know Kobe Mainoo's a very exciting young midfielder and a player that like, everybody's excited about. I don't know if he's the player that's going to come on and save a game for you. Hannibal Mejbri, again, a midfielder, not a particularly attacking midfielder from what I've seen. He scored that banger once, but I don't think he's a player that like, and United fans might now be shouting, okay, well, who do you bring on? Because on the bench, there really isn't that much depth. There's 2 goalkeepers, right? Like, it kind of says a lot. But I still feel like some of those substitutions were a bit... Is it his fault that they can't make a change? What do you think?
I think he could have set them up slightly differently, personally. I felt like, given that that they've got some attacking kind of wingers in that squad, but also if you looked at the formation, they had Goretzka, they had Kimmich in that middle of their kind of midfield as being the kind of battlers to hold off the ball and make sure you're kind of attacking. So you kind of know that the midfield area is going to be the area that you're going to have to contend with. So given that you've got someone as good as Rafael Varane that sat on the bench, surely, personally anyway, this is me thinking about it, I would have gone with a 3-5-2 formation. Personally, because I think you can try and solidify when you're on the counter-attack with a 5 in midfield and obviously, or 5 at the back, should say. Harry Maguire is much more comfortable as a 3 in defence. And look, he was obviously the player of the month for Man United as well in the Premier League, as if I believe rightly as well.
Premier League and manager of the month in this game, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, if you think about the fact that they aren't really creative in that final third at the moment, they're not creating the opportunities for Rasmus Højlund. And we saw glimpses of what he can do when he's basically getting the kind of last ball or just threaded ball against Galatasaray, wasn't it? That performance where he kind of acts on that last shoulder, essentially. So I feel like that was the missed opportunity that they could have stretched that Bayern Munich defence. We know it's not the most solid. If you saw the last game against Frankfurt, it's a lot of individual errors. So it was there to be exploited, right? But I don't think he necessarily played for that. And looking at his kind of tactics, I mean, if you call it tactics, I don't necessarily understand them. I don't know what he was expecting. It was almost like all the chips going into red and it went on black, right? That's what happened in this game. And unfortunately, I think that game kind of personifies issues at Man United. Like, they've just got no idea, and Ten Hag doesn't know how to change it. I mean, we've said it for weeks, Rory. I'm getting tired of it.
We've been saying it forever. And I also think one of the things, I saw a stat today that was, it's been 25 games and Anthony's got 1 goal. No assists and 1 goal. And I think another player who I dislike, but another player who I think that is a player that Ten Hag went in heavy on as this is the guy we want, right? 80 million, 100 million, whatever United fans want to argue it was a lot of money. He's worse than Pepe, right?
Yeah.
This, like, I think he again sums up the lack of quality at Manchester United, and it's tied to Erik Ten Hag because he was his guy. And I was watching again that Stick to Football and the interview with Jaap Stam, which I don't know if you've seen it. Really interesting, super top guy. Like, it just seems like a proper sound bloke. And he was saying he was confused when Manchester United signed Antony because he was like, he was okay in Holland, but he wasn't great. He wasn't like amazing, but he was
I saw that.
okay. And there are starting to be stories about players who United are getting linked to are being signed by Erik Ten Hag's agency.
Right, okay, yeah.
Or someone in his family has the agency and he's getting linked with these players. And I suddenly think, okay. Now, I know Ferguson did the same, right? Ferguson's, his son was an agent and got all his players signed up to agents or whatever. But it's just another thing where you're like, okay, was there something else going on here? Was there like just they've appointed a bad character, if you know what I mean?
Yeah,
or like their recruitment in general has been recruiting bad characters.
True.
Have they recruited a bad character as a manager as well? So it just feels like, it's all just a bit grim, isn't it? It's all just a bit grim. But I'm fed up of talking about Manchester United, so we're going to move on to Bayern Munich. And I just wanted to say, Kim Min-jae.
He's solid.
Freak me. I forgot how good he was because I don't watch much Bundesliga. I'll watch the odd game, but I forgot how incredibly good he is. He made Højlund look like he was playing against a schoolboy. It was insane.
Did, bullied him at times, and he was just made it. Basically, he's the typical type of player that Man United should have gone for, right? Someone that's no nonsense, got a bit of class about him, but it's just class in his position. And Bayern Munich own that now. So unfortunately, there's not going to be a chance.
Unreal. I just saw his timing of the tackle is incredible.
Yeah.
And his progression of the ball. Like, look at the problems Napoli are having now and not being able to build out from the back and not being able to get those moves started. That was all him. It was all him. It was just all through him. And it was a pleasure watching him again. I was like, oh God, I just forgot how good he was. And it's just great to watch him. And I think he's a player, like we mentioned it to Ben, right? Spurs were after him and Daniel Levy said, no, I'm all right. United were after him, didn't want to pay the money.
Yeah.
Every club in Europe should have been in for him, and it's an incredible piece of business that Bayern got it done. So I just wanted to give him a little nod because I thought he was fantastic throughout the game and did, absolutely run it. And he kind of makes up for Upamecano's slight lapses in concentration at times. I think he's able to kind of sweep up every so often. So, fantastic performance from him. But it does mean Manchester United are straight out of Europe. And my last thought on this, as I was watching the game, I was watching it. I was like, it was when it was 0-0. And I was like, oh, if United win and go through, that'd be quite funny. It would be funny because whoever they drew in the next round, I think they'd get battered. So I think that Bayern Munich have ultimately done them a favour and been like, no, let's just, for your own dignity, just leave now. And then without a fuss, nobody will say anything. Just, someone's had a few too many drinks at a party. Just go now before anyone notices and then it'll be all right.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think they should actually be thanking Bayern Munich because whoever they would have got, I think they would have been embarrassed, really.
Yeah.
So we missed out on that, unfortunately. But Bayern Munich do go through, and Copenhagen managed to get through. An incredible story. They had to get through the playoffs to get here. I think they were the second lowest ranked team to win the competition, if you know what I mean, in the bookies. The budget is tiny, but they have managed to get through with a 1-0 win against Galatasaray. And the good thing for Copenhagen is their youth team in the UEFA Youth Champions League are amongst the favourites to win it. They have just gone through their group stages and they are looking very, very exciting. So for Copenhagen, with a team with lots of exciting youngsters and bringing through their own youngsters, it looks like there are more on the way. So fantastic for Copenhagen. But how Laraga was busy, right? Scored and got sent off. But what did you think of their performance? Not as many goals as we hoped. I really thought there'd be more goals in this one.
I kind of called this and said I felt Copenhagen would win this game, just purely because I don't think Galatasaray are necessarily that great away from home. I think if this was at Galatasaray's ground, I think that's a different kind of game, the atmosphere with the crowd. But certainly, obviously, Galatasaray did take the game to them, but just weren't as clinical in front of goal. They did have the fair share of shots, but I think it was superbly marshalled by that Copenhagen defence, to be fair, and the likes of Dix as well, and Vavro, I think is how you pronounce it. They did fantastically well. And if you look at the general age of those players, they're experienced pros, but obviously not at this kind of level. So I think they did really well. And there's been a few standout performances from that Copenhagen team in general. Obviously, we've seen it against Man United in the previous group match as well. They've got some talented players, Rory. And the fact that they've got El Hanoussi, who, it didn't seem like much of a wonder at Southampton. Obviously, he had his fair share at Celtic. But I think that kind of shows you the glamour of this kind of Champions League ties, that they kind of spring these kind of underdogs to progress. And, just thankful that we've got something different in these group stages rather than the usual kind of top elite clubs in this mix. So it's nice from that point of view. And Grabara gets another appearance as well at the group stages. I cannot wait for that guy.
He was super emotional at the end, He was like really going absolutely mad. I think he could see that he was absolutely loving it. And like you said, Galatasaray had 22 shots, 7 on target. So he was busy. Like he was a busy guy, and he kept him in the game. And I think obviously he's very quickly become a pod favourite, and we're a little bit obsessed with him.
Exactly.
But I'm really, I was just happy to see him keep a clean sheet and keep them in the game. And I think, it's not going to be an easy place to go to, right? I think people are already looking at because I was obviously, as the draws as the pots settled and we could see who was seeded, who was unseeded, etc. I was like, okay, well, the dream tie really is kind of Porto or Copenhagen, right? Touch wood. But then I thought, well, look, I know Manchester United are a basket case, but Copenhagen have been very good at home in this campaign, right? And they've scored lots of goals, and they've not been terrible. They've not been a Royal Antwerp or whatever. If you know what I mean, they do very well.
Exactly.
Defensively, they are pretty solid. I know that United game they concede a lot of goals, but I think in general they don't tend to concede a lot of goals. So I think, it won't be an easy place to go. And what they do very well. So I think it's going to be interesting. I'm really excited to see who they get, because for their fans, that is it's incredible.
Amazing.
It is incredible.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
And unfortunately, Man United and Newcastle, we'll get onto them, might have cost the Premier League their extra coefficient.
They will, yes,
So everyone was going, okay, 5th place in the Premier League, they get, Champions League. Maybe not. And the rest of Europe will be laughing at us for our arrogance once again in just assuming that extra spot was going to England. Yes, we are a little bit arrogant. I apologise. Good. So that is Group A done and dusted. And of course, Galatasaray going to the Europa League.
They do.
Europa League's looking pretty spicy. I always like when these teams drop in. You're like, now it gets interesting. Now it gets really interesting.
Exactly.
But any other games on Tuesday? Union Berlin came so close.
So close, didn't they? Yeah, exactly.
So close. But
go on.
Unluckily for them, they managed to get the one day where Hosselu had his scoring boots on. He managed to get 2 goals. Both of them meant a lot to him as well. You could see that he was it felt like a bit of a weight off his shoulders. But the Alex Crowell goal was a beautiful hit. Premier League fans may remember him from a failed stint at West Ham where he just never got a game for some reason. But quite an exciting young technical midfielder. It's good seeing he came on and scored almost immediately. And then Arsenal loanee legend, who's managed to find himself a little bit of a job at Real Madrid somehow, Dani Ceballos gets the winner in the 89th minute. And once again, Union, so close, but no cigar. But what I did really like about this game was that the Union Berlin fans saw it just as a chance to celebrate. So they wanted to, because obviously they're not having a great season in the Bundesliga. I think they're still at risk of relegation, right? They're really struggling. But their fans just want to celebrate the fact that we've been to the Champions League. We are playing Real Madrid at home. And I think it just, once again, German football kind of shows you what the priorities are or what the priorities should be, right?
Yeah, I think they get the right morale kind of decisions right, I think. Obviously led by that kind of fan-led approach, certainly. And that's why they've got a distaste for the likes of your Leipzig's equivalents and your Hoffenheims. And, they've got a bit more kind of like appreciation for the likes of Bayern Munich, who are still kind of got that fan element to them as well. So, yeah, I just think they've got it right, haven't they, to an extent. Obviously, it just means that in years to come, I feel they'll be left behind, potentially because of the amount of investment that's going on in Europe as well. And to an extent, Rory, it obviously hasn't really touched Italy as much, but obviously I think eventually it won't be long. It won't be long. But yeah, it's just, you'd like that to be implemented across Europe. The way that they do things seems to be the most sensible way of working. And plus, you know, it's, I think, as Raphael Honigstein described it, it's the goaliest league, because there's always goals in that league. It's never boring, right? And you always get unpredictable results, as you saw from last weekend as well. So, and the Union Berlin one is a beautiful story in itself.
It is. It really is. It's kind of sad to see where they're at the moment, but I think their fans are seeing it as this has been a hell of a ride, and we'll be back if it does all go wrong. Elsewhere, just very quickly, RB Salzburg 1, Benfica 3. If you haven't seen it, the Arthur Cabral goal is absolutely insane. Just an incredible back heel. A player who did sod all at Fiorentina.
Exactly.
I think they were chasing him out of the door. He's not really done much since he got to Benfica, but if any goal's going to give you confidence, it's going to be that goal. Napoli 2, Braga 0, to do a bit of Italian. Braga, they scored an own goal in the first tie, and they scored an own goal in the second tie. Brilliant. I think they should be like gemelli. There should be twin clubs now, Braga and Napoli, because they've basically seen Napoli through the group.
They did, they helped them
Osimhen, again, with a kind of back heel, definitely accidental, though, right?
It almost feels like he didn't mean it, right? To be fair. So, just accidentally. It would have been more comical if he just laughed or fell over the ball at the same time and bundled it in with his arse or something like that.
It wasn't to be. And in very quickly, Inter 0, Sociedad 0. I was begging for Inter to score so they weren't second. I was like, just don't be second, because I've got a horrible feeling Arsenal are going to draw Inter, and we're going to get knocked out in the last 16 because we don't beat Inter. But they didn't score. Sociedad did hold still. The only moment I remember from this is an awful dive from Take Kubo, which was embarrassing. Yeah,
pretty embarrassing, to be fair. On that point that you made, though, do you think Inter played it right? Because obviously it does give you a bit of a scenario where they could be facing bigger sides at this stage. And I know there's been a topic around whether they should have got the big hitters playing in this match. What's your thoughts?
I was surprised that they didn't go a bit harder. But I also think every team who is seeded is looking at Inter and going, don't give me Inter.
Yeah,
like,
exactly,
I think Inter can beat any team that are in the Champions League at the minute.
Yeah.
Like, if you put them up against Man City over 2 legs, it goes differently than a final, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
If you put them up against a Real Madrid, Barcelona, I think Inter go through. Like, so I think it's almost like Inzaghi's maybe just gone, look, we'll just concentrate on squad fitness and getting through the next games, because no matter who we draw, we can back ourselves and we'll be all right. So I don't think there's a major issue there, but I was begging for them to score one goal. Like, come on, Alexis, do us a favour, man. Yeah. Sanchez, just one goal to get him top. I don't want to see him back at the Emirates because he's definitely scoring.
Just a picture of his dog will be enough, right?
Yeah. And elsewhere, just to very quickly wrap up, obviously Arsenal PSV was nothing, but Lens beating Sevilla.
Yes.
Lens are into the last 16. But the best moment of this game is, of course, provided by Sergio Ramos. There was 2 moments.
Of course it was.
When he got booked for booting someone, and I think he thought he was going to get sent off, but then the referee showed him a yellow card, and you could see the oh, okay, cool, right, that's fine, as he walked
just
off.
Carry on.
He was fully expecting a red. But the moment that really made it up was missing the first penalty.
Yes.
And then Panenkering the second one, because Bamba was so far off his line, but it was like it kissed the top of the crossbar, the Panenka. It was just beautiful. Just archetypal Sergio Ramos chaos. We're going to miss him when he retires. But Frankowski scored from Lens from the penalty spot. And Angelo Fulgini in the 96th minute to see Lens through the group stage. Another team that have come back after a very, very long break. They're going to be... Oh, no, they're in the Europa League. It's not too bad.
Yeah. So they get another game at least.
They get another game, exactly. But really, I think they were the team that impressed me most in the group beyond obviously Arsenal. Really, they were the team where I was like, obviously because they beat us, but there's a lot of players in that squad where I'm like, I would quite like Wahi. If you ignore his Wikipedia page, I would quite like him at Arsenal. So yeah, a lot of quality players there, but a good win for them. Sevilla not in the Europa League, which means someone else can win it. It's nice to let someone have a go, isn't it? Someone else have a go.
Exactly.
Let's move to Wednesday night. Wednesday night, Adam. Let's talk about Milan. It has to be Milan, right?
Let's do it.
It has to be Milan. Now, I don't often get a prediction right. I said I feel like Pioli will pull it out of the bag because that's what he does. And guess what he did? He pulled it out of the bag.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Yes,
this game was utter insanity. I feel like it was a full-on like basketball match. It was two teams just end to end going for it. Eddie Howe throwing everything at it at the end. Joe Linton with an absolute worldie. I think that might be the best goal he's ever scored, ever going to score. The first touch to set himself up, just what a hit. But then Pulisic and Chukwueze leave it late to get Milan over the line. But let's talk about Milan. Do you think Pioli actually managed this game quite well? I think he saw that Newcastle are going to be knackered at a certain point, and then we just go.
I don't know if it was by chance, though, Rory, to be fair. I don't want to say that to Pioli. I don't want to give him too much credit. But I kind of called it on Monday's live stream. I said I felt Newcastle would get into a stage of fatigue. Obviously, driven by the injury crisis that they've got at the moment. And obviously, they've not been able to rotate the players as they possibly would want to, right? And, you know, they kind of dominated that first half. I felt Milan really struggled to grapple with it. They didn't know how to cope with the wingers in particular. And obviously, when you had the drag backs for Joe Linton's goal, I mean, you just felt that Newcastle were just going to go on and score more goals. So fair play to the defence of obviously Milan when you consider that's a makeshift of Tomori and Teo Hernandez at the centre-back position, which we said Teo should be at left-back. He should be the one that's kind of driving the attacks for Milan. But, you know, he stuck to his principles there. I felt he didn't really help himself with the midfield as well. I didn't feel like they gave a lot of protection. But that said, you know, they were swamped. And I'm not too sure Ruben Loftus-Cheek is great in the position that he kind of deployed him as well for this particular match. But that said, look, second half, you could tell they just left the spaces. In particular, they just overran them in midfield. And eventually, they took advantage, right? They got themselves back into the game. At that point, it was still quite tight, I would say, because, you know, I think, what was it, 60th minute mark that they scored?
Yeah, 59th minute.
59th through Pulisic at the time. And even that goal didn't look like it was necessarily going to be given.
It was also
so weird,
a beautiful move that was entirely accidental.
Yeah, exactly. Especially that Giroud pass through. I mean, I don't think he would normally do that, but he was quite clever. The way he just saw Pulisic was in a better position than himself, right? That was just the experience side of it. And then I think that's what Newcastle were lacking at this stage, is just experienced heads around them. Chukwueze's goal, I mean, marvellous.
What a finish.
But we have to give Milan credit. It could have been 4. Like, look, Tomori hits the post, and before that, we had Teo, who has the goal at his mercy. And all I've seen so far is loads of videos going, how the fuck does this guy not know how to plant a ball into an empty net?
He's hit him from 60 yards into the top corner. I know you've been running a lot, Teo, but it just rolled along the ground. I was like, man, that was
on the right-hand side as well, right? And even before that, Rory, we had Rafael Leao hitting the post as well. He could have made it 3-1 at that point as well. So Milan had the fair share of the chances, but obviously, regardless of the result, they were waiting for one other result, weren't they, Rory?
They were waiting for it, and it wasn't to come. I want to quickly talk about Maignan made an incredible save as well to put it onto the crossbar. Unbelievable save. I feel like he's really playing himself into form a little bit. But yeah, in the other game, Dortmund won, PSG won. Another game that was just balls to the wall. PSG, I don't know how they didn't score more goals. Julien Laurent on European Goal Show was hilarious. James Horncastle laughing at him was hilarious.
Just ripping it out of him.
But just openly laughing in his face. But just the cries of despair from Julian Laurent as another ball went over the crossbar. Just, like, it was... That is PSG's problem, apparently, is just being able to put the ball in the back of the net. I thought, for all the chances they created, now I know that they've got the young player Barcola, who's very young, a bit inexperienced. He did not have a good night. It wasn't a good it wasn't a good performance from him. But the player, and I think I've talked about him before, where I've been like, I was confused as to how his price tag went up so quickly. Is Kolo Muani? I know. I still don't get it. Every time I've seen him in Europe or in the World Cup or whatever, I've just been like, this was 100 million, this guy, right?
That's the worrying thing, right? Frankfurt took them to the cleaners. Took them to cleaners.
He got released, and then Frankfurt got him for nothing, right? And then within a year, flipped it, which is fucking incredible
amazing
work.
business,
I hope that director of football got a big bonus. But every time I've seen him play, he just looks a bit like, in his style, Yaya Sanogo, where nothing really sticks to him. If he scores, it kind of looks a bit accidental. His hold-up play was atrocious in this as well. I just feel like he lost every ball. I thought it was just a really bad performance from him, but I don't want to jump on him too much. I think it kind of goes to the wider issue of PSG's recruitment, I suppose. They've been recruiting better, but there's still that odd player where you're like, why are you here? And when you've got a player like Mbappe, who did miss a lot of chances, right?
Yeah.
Who did, they had to rely on the 17-year-old to get the goal, if you know what I mean. It was screaming out that they just don't have that cutting edge yet or that consistency. No. And I think teams looking at them, and as an Arsenal fan looking at PSG, beyond Mbappe, I'm not particularly scared.
Yeah,
I'm like, okay, they've got Mbappe, so they could probably beat us. But beyond that, I think we could probably outdo their 11. If you know what I mean. Do you feel like it's still a lack of quality there? It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, this is generally a team in transition, right, Rory? I feel like, on to that point about Kolo Muani, and this is my kind of theory on this, I think that's an Mbappe signing. Personally, I just feel like
he wanted him there.
Mbappe potentially has a relationship from the French national team point of view. Obviously, he's favoured by Didier Deschamps. At the World Cup, I was much like yourself. I didn't really see necessarily what he got in him. Personally, I'm much more of a Marcus Thuram guy, and obviously he's proving his worth right now. But yeah, he had a good season at Frankfurt, but that was his kind of level, if I'd be brutally honest, not 100 millions worth of height value. And I mean, look, Luis Enrique's come into it. I think if they'd gone out of this stage, there'd have been a few questions asked, and Julian Laurent's kind of admitted this could have been one of the worst kind of European nights for PSG, but it wouldn't have been frowned upon, which is a bit weird, I think, given the circumstances. But it feels like this is going to be a team that is going to transition in time. So whilst we talk about these kind of transfers right now, I think more will be added over time. If Luis Enrique is going to embed and stay there as part of the project, I think he will generally get his players that he wants on board. It'll be interesting who they target next, but to your point, I wouldn't be scared about PSG in the next round if I was faced with them. Obviously, maybe you kind of concede maybe the home leg at PSG might be a bit of a difficult tie, but the away leg, easily you could take advantage, because I felt, look, Nicholas Füllkrug almost had opportunities to put chances away. So I think there's exploitation of that defence, and I think Hakimi's not the same Hakimi that we know from Inter. No. I mean, a few times where I think Julian Laurent is shouting at him saying, why isn't he releasing the ball earlier? And I think that kind of tells you all you need to know about this PSG team, is that they haven't got the fluidity just yet. But, I mean, I'm ready to be proved wrong. I'm sure this is where they go on to the final or something stupid like that now.
And that's the thing with them. They easily could as well, and you wouldn't be surprised. You just nothing surprises you with this team. I also just have to say, obviously, that Zaire Emery is just fucking incredible. I cannot believe he's 17 and just absolutely running games consistently. Just what a player. And PSG, please discover that you have one of the best youth systems in the world and one of the richest pools of talent in world football.
Splash out money? That is the point, right?
You don't even need to. I know, again, another thing that Julian Laurent always goes on about is like all these players from Paris. If they could just play for PSG, you'd have one of the best teams in the world. Anyway, for Dortmund, we have to give them credit as well. Going through top of the group is insane.
With that squad.
Most people thought they were going to finish third, bottom, I think, right?
Or bottom, yeah.
And again, I thought there was a really good performance from Nicolas Sula. I thought he was really, really good. There's a few moments where he really stood out.
Yeah. He's look, on his day he can be a very good defender. And he was at Bayern Munich for a reason. Look, he wasn't just because he was a German national, it was because they definitely saw potential in him. And I think the thing that you need to work on is being consistent in his game. But when you've got someone like Mats Hummels right next to you, you're learning off the best, I feel. And we saw that performance at Milan where he kind of was Cannavaro-esque with his tackles. I felt like I've never seen Hummels pull off that performance in a while. So when you've got someone beside you that is doing that, I mean, that's going to breed confidence in you, but you're going to start kind of appreciating his reading of the game and you start mimicking it. So I think, look, the Dortmund are going to be difficult opponents for whoever they face. I'd kind of question maybe the firepower, but I think they are dangerous on the break as well. So Eddie Howe in particular, I think, is one to watch out for. We know about him from last season anyway, but I think going forward, he looks like a player that will grow in confidence as the group stages to move on and he progresses. So it depends on the tie, right, Rory? But Borussia Dortmund, do not underestimate them, is what I would say.
Definitely, they are looking a lot. I think Edin Terzic is starting to get a little bit of a thing out of him. He was getting quite close to losing his job, but it's good to see that he's kind of turning it around a little bit. That was the roughest end to a season ever last year as well.
Oh, that was horrible.
Quite sorry for him. But moving on for the Wednesday night, let's go to Belgium. Antwerp 3, Barcelona 2. It was very nearly 3-3. The goal was ruled out. And their first ever win in the Champions League. It's incredible, right?
Brilliant.
And Vincent Janssen on the goals, the most incredible thing. Vincent Janssen on the score sheet. It's nice. I thought this was just, without sounding patronising, a really nice moment for the Royal Antwerp fans, right?
Yes.
You want that one thing, like Celtic, right? You want that one thing where you're like, bang, we got a win.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
We've made a mark. And for that win to be against Barcelona, albeit they were down to 10 men, right? They got someone sent off.
Not in this game, not that I'm aware of.
Someone sent off. No,
I think it was. Was
it turned over?
VAR, yeah.
Yeah, it was turned over by VAR. Okay, so it wasn't against 10 men. Incredible win, right? Absolutely insane.
Yeah, brilliant win. And to be honest, Rory, I think you're giving a bit of disrespect to Antwerp because I feel Barcelona just did not turn up for this match. They did not care. It's interesting in the build-up to the game that supposedly Xavi and Laporte had some words about certain players not being included initially for this match. So the likes of Lewandowski wasn't going to be played because he would need to rest him, for example. But he was forced to play certain players, and it was evident that, like, clearly, you know, the whole rapport of that team was not there. It was interesting. I don't know if you noticed this, but it's been noted that Lewandowski is very cold with certain members of the Barcelona team. Surprise,
you said this about the
shock.
Polish national team as well, though, eh?
Exactly. And I saw with the goal celebrations, in particular on the goal show, I saw that there wasn't necessarily a kind of love for Lewandowski when he came over. It was very much a group of them, and then Lewandowski kind of ran over, and that was it. So I don't know what that kind of spells out for the harmony going forward. But I would say if anyone gets paired up with Barcelona, I think they're the first team that go out of this next stage. I think they don't look like the Barcelonas that we would anticipate. And I think the other thing is Xavi is on very tight kind of chance at the moment. I mean, look, if it wasn't for the fact that he's a club legend, I think any other manager gets kicked out of the door, and he's got a lower win percentage this season compared to most Barcelona managers. That includes Ronald Koeman, who he replaced. So his win percentage isn't great this season, and I think that team is just in turmoil again, a bit like a Man United scenario, but driven by the financial issues from previous regimes. So not great, but Barcelona they don't deserve to be any further, I think, at this stage. And Royal Antwerp, fantastic win, so well done.
Exactly, incredible to see, incredible to see. Yeah, I think the tide is turning against Xavi with the Barcelona fans as well.
Yeah.
I think they're starting to be like, okay, you're not. Who'd have thought that just managing in the Qatari Stars League or whatever wasn't enough to take over at one of the biggest clubs in the world? Who'd have known?
Exactly.
Anyway, let's move on to the game in the same group, which was much better, I think.
Yeah, much more fun.
Adam, Porto 5, Shakhtar Donetsk 3. You said there was going to be goals. You said it was going to be a banger. It was. You delivered. Take us through this game. I felt really bad that Shakhtar just couldn't quite catch up to them.
Yeah, I was gutted from that point of view because as soon as the first goal goes in for Porto, you're kind of thinking, right, this could be a massacre from Porto. But fair play to Shakhtar, they kind of gave a bit of fight. And it wasn't necessarily through a determination. They kind of outwitted Porto at certain stages of this match. So they kind of cleverly manoeuvred certain moves in this game, and that helped them to kind of create those opportunities which they scored. But Porto, I mean, just incredible in this match. I mean, they're a team that I would say, be careful because they've got some good players. Galano in particular was someone that, his second one in particular, although it got deflected off the Shakhtar Donetsk defender.
That was an unlucky deflection,
but I think it's Stepanenko. But yeah, from that point onwards, like it was just a bit of a massacre, and I felt sorry for Shakhtar because they'd done so well to resiliently stay at this point where they could have qualified for the next stage. But yeah, I mean, I kind of said it on the group chat. I wish actually this game could continue. Like, just forget about full time. Just play on till extra time. I'm sure
give us another half hour or something.
Right? Exactly. It would have been fun.
It was fantastic. I think I love the fact that Sergio Conceição's son came on and scored with his first touch when he came on late in the game in the 82nd minute. Pepe getting a goal is always lovely to see. He's still hanging around. Still hanging around. And Eguinaldo, who came on for Shakhtar Donetsk, another young, exciting player with a really nice finish. Just really calm, took his time, stuck it right in the bottom corner. It was a beautiful finish. So I think, unlucky for Shakhtar Donetsk, but I think Porto just absolutely ruthless up front. I do also want to say some of their defending was atrocious.
It's got Pepe in it. What can you say?
Some of their defending was really bad. I think one of the Shakhtar Donetsk goals, they wanted a foul, and it was net. The guy kicked the ball into his own face and then was like, foul. I was like, guy, just play the game. Honestly, just play the game. So I think some of the defending was terrible. But, fantastic game. Just to round up quickly, Atletico Madrid, Lazio 0. Atletico only score beautiful goals. They scored another incredible goal that was ruled out because the defender got in the way of Providel, which was rightly ruled out, but it was a hell of a hit. But the Lino goal in particular, I thought was an absolutely incredible goal. Atletico Madrid are playing some very, very good football. Again, we've talked about Simeone, that he's not married to this absolute shithouse 11-man behind the ball thing. When they want to, and when he wants to, and when he has the quality, his teams play some beautiful football. And I think they're really starting to play some exhibition stuff here. Like, I've just been really impressed by them. Like, and I've said it before, I think they're dark horses. Like, this is another impressive performance, albeit against a Lazio that are struggling, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I kind of called Atletico the dark horses to kind of progress into the latter stages. I feel like they've got a very agile squad because if you remember in certain group matches, he actually deployed Witsel as a centre-back as well. But they've got certain players that were rested, like Marcus Llorente as well, for example. He's been very good for them this season as well. But I forgot about the likes of Memphis Depay when he came on and obviously took a free kick.
I had to double take when I saw him, honestly.
Well, he looks like he just transformed his kind of hair regime again. But completely different guy to what we recognise him as. But I mean, they've got some exciting players, Rory. Alvaro Morata should have probably scored one. He really blasted an effort, which is unlike him. He's been very much a player that's been on form this season. But that said, look, they comfortably dominated this group stages, and I wouldn't want to face them in the next round. A bit like your Inter, right? I think anyone that gets paired up with them, they're in for a tight game.
Yeah, thank God they finished top. I am absolutely delighted with that because we've talked about it before. I do not want to go up against Simeone, not even slightly. And elsewhere, very quickly on Wednesday night, Celtic got their first win in the 91st minute. Larga Bielka, one of the players who got sent off away in Feyenoord when Celtic went down to 9 men. It was nice for him to get the winning goal at the end, to have that moment of kind of like, making up for that, maybe Celtic get their win. I think all round a pretty good performance by Celtic. Feyenoord obviously didn't really have a lot to play for, so I think there was maybe a bit of an off day, but Celtic very, very good there.
Quick question on that one. Liam Scales, is he part of the Irish squad?
I think he is in contention, yes.
Because he looks really good on this particular match. So, just one to keep an eye out on. Because I think he's...
Celtic just keep giving us Irish players.
Was he like a son of John Scales or something like that? But I don't think he is.
No. I've definitely heard him talked about with like Irish football fans. And I think if it wasn't for Celtic, the Irish national team would be in trouble, to be honest. That's a very good shout. And elsewhere, very quickly, Man City with 2 youngsters. One of the best names in football, Oscar Bob. I just have to say that's a fantastic name. Oscar Bob getting a goal. And Mika Hamilton, who in the post-match had the most Manchester accent. And it just always warms my heart a little bit when they sound proper Manchester. And you're like, oh, it's a proper local lad. A beautiful finish as well. And Calvin Phillips with a penalty. To win the game towards the end. His reaction was, I know it's not an important game, but his reaction was like super muted. And it was like, I think he just like saw his family in the crowd.
Almost like acceptance.
It looked like a bit of a farewell, right? It looked a bit of like, right, I've got my goal. I'll be going, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. You'll be remembered for this moment alone, and that's it, basically.
Yeah, poor bugger. I hope he doesn't end up at United. He can't screw over Leeds fans like that, can he? He can't.
No, I don't think so. I think he'll go to a different club, personally. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes to Spurs, personally. I think he'd end up
Spurs,
there.
Newcastle, Juve, they're the ones that are being linked. I would love to see him at Juve, to be fair. Get him in Serie A. I'd absolutely love it out here. But that is the Champions League, guys. And that was the end of... just like that, it was the end of the group stage. And now we need to get to the depressing bit. So next year, it's going to be definitely not a Super League. Stop saying it's a Super League system. Where, Adam, do you want to try to explain this in the least complicated terms possible?
I'm still going to struggle with this, Rory, but I will try my best on this. So from next season, there'll be 36 clubs taking part in this one overall big league table. Essentially, there'll be various different pots, which will be also seeded as well. So whoever's in pot 1, for example, will be kind of seen as the highest of the elite, I suspect. But what that actually means in the grand scale of things, it means increased amount of games. So whereas we've seen around 125 games at this stage, it will move to 225 games. Each team will have to play around 10 games each. So the way it works roughly, Rory, is pot 1 will get to face 2 clubs from pot 2. And then it will be a combination of pot 3, 4, and etc. So it'll work in that basis. There's about 9 to 10 different pots, all based on different criteria as well. So there'll be coefficients, for example. There'll be best ranking team as well, for example. It's all very complicated. It's making my head hurt because it's not definitely the Krupnik. I'll just stress that out. But it is generally a bit confusing, and I'm not looking forward to this format because, as we've just kind of described, there's more games. And I appreciate this isn't the Super League, but where does that kind of leave the other leagues in terms of resting players, looking after players' health, well-being, etc.? I think the Premier League is going to have to address how they do things going forward, along with the FA. Because if you think about our schedule at home, for example, where we've got the League Cup, FA Cup, for example, Charity Shield, if you are one of those top 2 placed teams, for example, I mean, and then you forget about these clubs going on pre-season tours as well before this all kicks off.
Club World Cup.
And then don't forget the national sides as well, because they'll be coming from the Euros in the summer and going straight into this for some of these players. So there's no rest for the wicked. And don't forget, if some of those players have to maneuver moves, for example, transfer moves as well. I'm not a fan of this. No. I don't see what they're trying to achieve. And we spoke offline. It'll be interesting to see what they do with the extra money that they gain from this. Will they donate that to grassroots, which I suspect it won't happen. It'll go to line the pockets of UEFA here. Or the clubs is what is being rumoured to be the case, because it'll be extra money for them as well. But I don't see a winner in all of this, because I can see there being flaws across it, and I wouldn't be surprised if this gets scrapped within a couple of seasons. But Rory, let's take your thoughts on this.
Well, they said it's kind of guaranteed for at least 4 or 5 years, right? They said they're going to
it was signed, wasn't it?
Yeah, like it's guaranteed for a while, unfortunately. Now, I think in the interest of balance, the European Cup used to be just champions, and it used to be straight knockout, and some people still say, oh, it should be that. But then they did this, and we came to love that, and we came to love the group stage, and it had iconic moments, and it was beautiful, and we came to love it because we love football, ultimately. So maybe in 10 years' time, we look back and go, oh, you know what? I love this. Do you remember when I finished 28th out of 36? What a year. I don't know. Maybe that will happen. Who fucking knows? But what I feel about... Now, I've played this on Football Manager.
Sure.
And I just didn't even try to comprehend it. I just went, okay, finish as high as you can and play whoever the computer says you play. I honestly just didn't look at it. And I was like, I'm not even going to try. I'm playing friggin', I don't know, Mostar. Okay, cool. Okay, next is Barcelona. Sick. Right. I don't know. I just didn't even try to comprehend it. So I think eventually we'll get our heads around it, and we'll be talking about the nuances of it and why finishing 17th is better than finishing 18th or whatever. But I just think ultimately the main problem with this is that it's an antidote, or an attempted antidote, to the Super League. UEFA want to get that money that the Super League was after. And again, it comes down to player welfare, like you said, just the amount of frigging games players have got to play. And I think they're all they will get to a point where they oversaturate the market. Like, if you think about, it's going to sound a bit weird, but like gritty police dramas, right? Yeah. Everyone loves a gritty police drama, and you get really good ones like The Killing, right? Or ITV will make some odd really good one, right? But then Channel 5 will pump out some shite gritty TV drama, political police drama, and you're like, oh bloody hell, bastard! Like, enough of these police dramas, right? And they just oversaturate the market to the point where it doesn't become interesting anymore. And people don't watch any of it because there's that much shite about. Yeah, exactly. Why would you take a risk on a series? Because I don't know if it's going to be good or not. At some point, the quality of football, if you continue to pile on games like this, is going to get to a point where people like casual observers, not psychos like us who are obsessed with the game, but casual observers, aren't going to switch over and watch it because, well, what's this competition again? How does this one work?
Exactly.
Why are the players barely running? Why has he got another hamstring injury? Why has Reece James not played in 10 years? Like, it's
going to be a mess.
It's just oversaturating the market. And I think eventually and again, this is something that's been said for years, the bubble will burst with football. But if there's anyone I can trust to burst the bubble, it's Infantino.
Oh, massively, yeah.
I fully think he's capable of doing it. And I think this is a step in that direction. And look, I'll still watch all the Arsenal games and still get overly upset about losing to the 35th place team. But it's just not good, is it? It's just not good.
It's not.
We're stuck with it now. And we're just stuck with it.
There's other thoughts I've just thought off on the spot. So how big are teams going to be in future, for example? Because the amount of games, as we kind of described, will there be like 36-man squads? I mean, how will that balance in terms of quality be there as well? For example, so the fans, how do they kind of feel like, they're having to take on extra journeys as part of it as well, as part of this experience?
Who can afford to do all these games?
Of course.
Just very quickly, on the size of the squad thing, for a while, I've thought that eventually in football we'll end up with like NFL-style squads. NFL-sized squads where you have like an attack and a defense, and then an attack and a defense, and you have reserve players that are literally just there to stay fit in case somebody gets injured. Yeah. You're just paying them on the payroll to be there. I think we will get there, and we're kind of getting there now. Because if you think about all the rhetoric around winning the Premier League, right? What do people say? You need 2 first 11s. Yeah. So already you need 2 teams that are able to go out on the pitch and beat anyone else. I don't know what just happened there. It's my birthday, apparently. For listeners, a load of balloons just went on because I did a peace sign. I was counting 2, but anyway. So you already need 2 squads. I'm trying to remain on track here. You already need 2 squads. So I think we're not that far away from like full-on NFL-sized squads. But anyway, we're getting into a rabbit hole here. Basically, UEFA have shagged European football. Congratulations. We used to like the Champions League. Now it's going to be confusing for everybody involved. But before we go for a very quick break, I just wanted to go through the Europa League tables and just tell you who has qualified. West Ham have gone through top.
Nice.
Brighton have gone through top.
Nice.
Rangers have gone through top. That's incredible. Atalanta have gone through top. Goodbyes. Yeah. Liverpool have gone through top. And any other? Roma finished second in the group ultimately, but they are through. They will have to go through the playoffs. And that's it. In the Conference League, very quickly, we have looking for the English. It always takes ages to find English and Italian teams in this one. Aston Villa have been through. They went through top.
Yes.
And Fiorentina, top.
Yes.
They drew in Ferencváros in Budapest. Got the job done. And, well, Aberdeen were already out. But they did beat Frankfurt.
But they beat Frankfurt, who had Mario Götze playing for them. So, fair play to Aberdeen. I think they've been unlucky as well.
Still playing.
They've been unlucky. So, it says it's full time for me, Rory. So,
done.
Yeah, done. Well done.
There we go. That is the end of all the group stages. The Conference League had the group stages for 2 years. That's it. And then they completely rehauling the whole thing. Incredible. Anyway, we're going to go for a very quick break, and we're going to come back with some Serie A and Premier League preview action. See you there, guys.
Hi, I'm David Wheeler, and you're listening to the Anglo-Italian podcast.
And here we are. Time to go back to domestic football. Premier League and Serie A preview time. And I'm going to go for the Premier League. Are you ready, Adam?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Starting on Friday evening, Nottingham Forest will be hosting Tottenham. Steve Cooper barely clinging on to his job. Spurs fresh from that buoyant defeat of Everton. Not Everton. Who was it? Who did they beat? Newcastle. That's who they beat. Buoyant of their win from Newcastle. And Richarlison in free-scoring form. Will Tottenham be able to continue their winning streak? We have Bournemouth hosting Luton in the first of the 3:00 kickoffs. Bournemouth in fantastic form again.
Yep.
They'll be looking to really secure their place in the Premier League there. Now, the first interesting game of the weekend, I think Chelsea will be hosting Sheffield United. I think Chris Wilder back in, first win under the belt. Chelsea, absolute shit show.
Yeah.
I can honestly see Sheffield United getting a result here. A la Nottingham Forest earlier in the season. I can honestly think that might be the coupon buster of the weekend. Man City will be hosting Crystal Palace on 3:00. And because Crystal Palace beat them once about 10 years ago at the Etihad, I think they're going to win again because they are officially a bogey team. Andros Townsend scoring that banger. Do you remember that? Oh,
yes.
And the final of the 3:00 kickoffs, Newcastle taking on Fulham. An interesting game here. Fulham obviously in free scoring form. 2 5-0s in a row or 5 goals in 2 games in a row, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely killing it. Newcastle knackered. I think Fulham could get a result here. I'm going to say a draw. And the late kick on Saturday, it's the Sean Dyche derby as Burnley host Everton. That's going to be an Everton win. And on Sunday, we have all the W's as West Ham and Wolves both go hunting for a W. West Ham in terrible form. Wolves, I think West Ham could get something there, though. At the same time, we have Brentford hosting Aston Villa and Arsenal against their proper bogey team at home. The last 3 games at the Emirates, Brighton have won. So Arsenal need to get this one under the belt. Thankfully, usually we play them at the tail end of the season when there's loads on the line, and it's just like, oh crap, we're shitting ourselves. This time, there's a bit on the line, but it's not like May. So maybe we can get a job done. And Brighton have struggled after European ties. I think they've only won one game after they've played midweek. So time for them to win their second, I suppose. And the last game on Sunday, how many goals do we reckon, Adam? Liverpool taking on Man United. Bruno Fernandes suspended. Unfortunately, gutted for him. He won't be able to play the game. He'll be crying because he's always crying. But how many goals do you reckon Liverpool will get in this game?
If they don't go north of maybe 2 or 3, then I'll be very surprised. I think obviously there will be a sense of pride in this match, right, for Man United, or you'd at least hope so. Who knows? But yeah, I can see this being a really big win for Liverpool, to be fair. The way that they're playing at the moment, it's all in their hands, I feel, for this particular match. And it'll be interesting what the reaction will be to Ten Hag thereafter. I know we've kind of speculated that there probably won't be a change, but at some point there's going to be some kind of hands forced in terms of the owners and what they do with Erik Ten Hag and just getting this whole process of the ownership piece. So, I think this will be a handsome 3-0 win at least for Liverpool.
And with us saying that, guys, now you can absolutely pile on Manchester United because we will never, ever get it
predictions.
Right. yeah. So, Adam, that is a Premier League weekend. It's a big one. Take us through the Serie A weekend. Let's go.
Yeah, not too many big kind of games or matchups, but we'll start off with tomorrow or today as you're listening to the pod, as we see Juventus having another Friday night fixture, Rory. It's Genoa taking on Juventus. Genoa at home. Obviously, they've been kind of hit and miss of late, Genoa, but Juventus, I don't know, they seem to be fixing these Friday fixtures in their favour at the moment. So I might be reading too much into it, Rory, but maybe that's for another pod one day. Anyway, we'll move into Saturday's fixtures. So starting at 2 p.m, we've got Lecce taking on Frosinone. And then later on at 5 o'clock, we've got Napoli taking on Calgary. And at 7:45, it's that classic Torino versus Empoli. Move into Sunday's fixtures even. At 11:30, we have got a bit of a rivalry. I suppose it's slightly starting to brew, isn't it?
Kind of.
But it's AC Milan versus Monza. So Galliani gets to sit where he used to sit in the San Siro. And see his beloved Monza side take on AC Milan. So we'll see what happens in that particular match because, Monza have been doing quite well of late. Move on to 2 o'clock kickoffs. So we've got Fiorentina taking on Hellas Verona, Udinese taking Sassuolo, and then for the late kickoffs, we've got at 5 p.m. a bit of a good match here, Rory. Bologna taking on Roma. And then at 7:45, this is the big game of the weekend, Lazio taking on Inter. I am going to be doing a little bit of a preview on Lazio and why they're struggling this season, so make sure you look out for that on our YouTube channel. Just to say, Lazio have been formidable at home, so this won't be a guaranteed kind of result for Inter, but the way that form is for Inter and the fact that they've rested some players, Rory, it could be a hell of a banger. And then moving on to Monday's fixture, so we've got 7:45, Atalanta taking on Salernitana. So Salernitana look rooted to the bottom of Serie A at the moment, and I'll be very surprised if they stay up this season, Rory. But that's your fixtures in Serie A.
Beautiful. I just have to say a little extra FN talk. With my Bari team, I went on a 10-game losing streak, but I ended it against Salernitana. I thought this is absolutely classic. You can just absolutely bank on them, can't you? They've been so good to have in the league, but I don't think they'll be here next year. Well, guys, that is the Premier League and Serie A weekend. Incredible stuff. I'm actually excited for it. And we're going to take another very quick break, and we're going to come back with the penultimate mastermind of the show. Let's go. And here we are. You tense listeners, I'm tense because it's my turn to answer the question. So I'm going to pass the figurative mic over to Adam and let him do the hosting duties.
Yes, thank you, Rory. So for this penultimate mastermind of the year, we are going to be giving you 2 options, Rory. Your favourite, which is football nicknames in the UK, Or alternatively, because we have said goodbye to the group stages of the Champions League, a general roundup of the history of group stages of the Champions League. So this is basically the history of, and not necessarily recent history of the Champions League. So entirely your choice. But yeah, I found this quite fun to compile. Let's put it that way.
Nice. I'm going to push myself. I'm going to say the history of the group stages. I'm going to get 0. Let's do it.
Right, let's set that timer then, and we'll take it from there. So bear with. And we will set the timer to 1 minute. And Rory, we will start this in 3, 2, 1. When does the Champions League start? You've got June, July, or August as options.
June.
Incorrect. Who has the record for the most defeats in Champions League games? You've got 3 choices: Porto, Dynamo Kiev, or Steaua Bucharest.
Dynamo Kiev.
Incorrect. How many times has a Champions League game ended 4-4? You've got 3 options: 12, 6, or 3.
Always go down the middle. 12. No, 6. Wait.
Incorrect. Number 4. Which player has made the most Champions League group appearances? You've got 3 options: Raul, Cristiano Ronaldo, or Iker Casillas.
Casillas.
Incorrect. Which team holds the record for the most 0-0s or nil-nils? AC Milan, Roma, or Real Madrid? And with that is time.
AC Milan.
Correct. You've got it. With
last minute
winner
done. At the back post.
Well done. So we'll go through those questions and the answers. So first question: when does the Champions League start? It is in July, Rory. Believe it or not, that's when they kind of pre-qualify.
I should know that. I've done enough FM seasons to know that. I'm disappointed.
Second question: who has the record for the most defeats in Champions League games? You said Dynamo Kiev. It is actually, believe it or not, Porto. Porto have the record for the most defeats. Number 3, how many times has a Champions League game ended in 4-4? Now, I thought you were going to guess right here, Rory. You were kind of going, it was 3. It's not 6 or 12. Which player has the most Champions League appearances? You said Iker Casillas. Now, initially, it was until Cristiano Ronaldo, given his amount of moves, did eclipse it. So yes, he did manage to
always go for
record.
Ronaldo with records. If it's a record, just say Cristiano Ronaldo.
Exactly. And you did get correctly with nil-nils which team has the record, and it is AC Milan. So I have got some alternative questions, but given the time on the clock, I think we can conclude it there. So, Rory, we're going to have to tally up who actually wins this series of Mastermind.
I will try and go back and have a look. I'll try and go back and have a look and see, because it would be quite nice to give some finality for the listeners, right? Rather than it being an entire waste of time. I will go back and check. But guys, thank you for joining us. As always, it's been a pleasure. Hope it's been a pleasure for you. You can find us on Twitter at Italian Anglo Pod, on Instagram at Anglo-Italian Pod, and on YouTube. Go and like and subscribe all our things. And on TikTok as well, Anglo-Italian Pod. And we will be back on Monday with our live show, as always, 8:30 UK time, 9:30 Central European time, to discuss all of the weekend action. So we hope to see you there. Adam, anything to say before I send them off with a quote?
No, just do as much as you can to spread the word on our YouTube channel. We are trying to go to the 500 subscriber kind of mark. At the moment, we're at 250. So thank you for those that already subscribe, but that would be really appreciated if you can get us to the next level. So have a great weekend of football.
Let's do it. And we're going to finish with, we have some characters that often appear on this show, whether it's Richard Keys or Grabara or I don't know who's another we always talk about. But
Nathan Jones.
The one who's recurring. Sorry,
Nathan Jones.
Nathan Jones is another one. Well, this one, we can't get him out of the shop at the minute. He's always here. And we're going back to Michael Owen, and this is him responding to his critics in his critically acclaimed show with the referee. Is it called? I've never even bloody seen it. But him on Twitter, here we go, from the great Michael Owen. You're just scumbags. Always have been. Troll through a load of messages until you find a couple of negative ones and then create an article. Most people thought the show was insightful and educational. which is our aim. Well, Michael, judging by the hidden replies, not everybody agrees with you. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining us, guys. We will see you next week. Ciao. Adolfo.
Ciao, ciao.